Robert Plank Show, episode 194, The Voice Formula. Captivate the Room and become a more interesting speaker with Tracy Goodwin. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. And our guest today is Tracy Goodwin. She's the owner of Captivate the Room. Now, Tracy started speaking and winning awards at the age of 12, and she later went on to become a professional actor for many years. Now, Tracy holds 2 MAs and has coached hundreds of people around the globe about how to step into their voice power and make a big impact with their message. Tracy is a true expert in voice technique, presentation, and storytelling skills, and has been for over 20 years. Now, her approach is very unique in that it not only creates voices that captivate the room, but it also transforms lives. I can't wait to talk about that. How are things today, Tracy?
It's good. It's good. How are things with you?
Super fantastic, better than ever, awesome times 1 trillion over here. So,
Oh, cool.
I think so. So let's talk about you. I mean, so you help people to speak better and tell stories. Is that right? Or like, what do you do that makes you stand out? What makes you special?
Well, it's so funny. And I always tell this, I tell this story a lot when, people say, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a marketer. When people say to me, what do you do? I say, I'm a voice expert. They kind of get this funny look on their face like, oh, what is a voice expert? And what I do, my true purpose and calling is to really help people step into their real voice, their real power, their real story, and make a massive impact with that on their customers, on the world, on their life.
That sounds awesome. And so like, what does that mean exactly? Like, what does it mean if someone doesn't have that, and what does it mean if someone does have that?
Well, the funny thing about it is that we're basically all born with speaking in our real voice, with all these beautiful nuances, with, the ability to share our stories and step into vulnerability. And as we grow and grow up and get older and have experiences, we pull that back. So for a lot of people, they're really not speaking in their real voice, and they're really tempering the way they put their words and their voice out into the world. It's something that I call psychology of the voice. And what happens is, our subconscious mind, as we have these experiences, many of them negative, but not all of them, they tap into that vulnerability, and they say, hey, pull that sound back. Hey, don't use your words. Somebody told you to shut up. Stop talking. You've been told to stop talking. So little by little over the years, we create bad voice habits. Maybe our sound doesn't come completely out of our mouth. Maybe we drop our endings. Maybe we choose not to tell stories. Maybe we choose not to use our words. Maybe we don't use all the elements of variety, all out of fear of judgment. Because let's face it, the minute we open our mouth, you, me, everybody on earth, we're setting ourselves up for judgment. So what I do, so a lot of people are past that. They've worked through that. They're on the other side of that. It doesn't bother them. They don't worry about that, or maybe they've corrected bad voice habits. But for many people, it manifests in confidence. That's what most people come to me and say. They say, I'm just not confident when I speak. I just don't sound confident when I speak. And so we correct those habits and kind of build back that confidence through the voice.
Interesting. And when you're describing this problem that people have, I'm hearing that you mentioned a couple of times like the word vulnerability. You mentioned a couple of times the word fear, and I could totally relate to that. That maybe at first we all like start off in a certain space and have a certain way of speaking, and it sounds like from what you're describing is that maybe people feel like they need to be more careful or more polished just because they stood for something or had an opinion or made a statement in the past. Maybe they've been shot down and they don't like that sort of like the polarizing of that. So I mean, is that sort of on the right track, that maybe people have been sort of beaten down by the rest of the world, and now they've been sort of pushed into these bad speaking habits that you mentioned?
That's it. That's spot on. And, invariably when I'm working with clients, they'll pop off with a story. It just kind of hits them. They knew it, but they had forgotten about it. It will be anything from, oh my gosh, I used to talk all the time in high school and my teachers continually told me to shut up. Oh, I was raised in a family where we weren't allowed to speak. Oh, my, ex-wife or ex-husband always used to make fun of my voice. Oh, my college professor, my boss, my this, my that. And those things add up, and it all goes, we're not even aware of it. It goes into our subconscious mind. And because that's linked to vulnerability, which is linked to the voice, the mind says, I got you. Don't worry. We're going to pull that sound back. And so you're going to speak because you have to speak, but you're going to mumble your words, and then you're safe. So yes, you're exactly right.
And so, how does someone reclaim that voice? How does someone get back to the good way of speaking?
Well, as these experiences go in our lives, and, they can start when we're 3 or they can start when we're 30, everybody's a little bit different. But let's say you pull your sound back and you keep it stuck in the back of your throat. What happens is you do that repeatedly and you lay that into the muscle memory. So your muscles, that's what they're going to do. You've basically trained them to do that. It's just like anything else, the way you open your car door or the way you make coffee or get ready in the morning. We train ourselves to do that. We put that in the muscle memory. It's almost automatic. So what we need to do is we need to retrain the good habits in. So let's say somebody's voice is stuck in the back of their throat. For years, they've held that voice in the back of their throat. That's what their muscles have been trained to deliver. So they get a big speaking gig and they try to think, okay, I'm going to get my voice out. Well, that won't work because the muscles are going to do what they've been trained to do. So what I do is I go in and through a series of techniques and exercises, basically lay something new into the muscle memory. So I'll pull that sound out of the back of the throat so it'll flow out forward like it's supposed to. And then we set that in the muscle memory, and that becomes the new voice that's filled with good voice habits.
Interesting. So when you find, for example, this particular example that you laid out where someone's voice is in the back of their throat, I mean, are you seeing that, is that a really common thing to happen to people? Or, I mean, just off the top of your head, like, what are maybe the top 2 or 3 problems people are having with their speaking that you're correcting?
Well, that is definitely extremely common, that they've tempered their voice in such a way where it's either stuck in the back of their throat or it drops through the bottom of their jaw or it goes up through their nose. Or what I even see a lot of is that the words come forward and they literally pull them back in. I can see the muscles of their face pull those words back. And so that results in dropped endings, or like the difference in me saying, how are you doing today? It's great to talk to you, versus how are you doing today? It's great to talk to you. Going forward and back. So that's very common. Another really common thing is people tempering variety. When we have conversations with our friends and our family and people we trust, we have all kinds of variety, highs and lows and fast and slows and louds and softs. And then when we get into more vulnerable situations, more work situations, where there's potentially more judgment, we flatline. And so a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, I'm just not captivating. I'm just not interesting. I just don't sound like you do. How do I sound like you do? You see, I flatlined everything. And it's because they've trained themselves not to be as interesting, because that's in their subconscious mind a little more dangerous. That's a little scary. But we naturally do it. And I would say that the third thing that I see the most of is people not breathing. People literally holding their breath in. They're breathing, but they're not letting the breath out. So they put a whole lot of words in, a little bit of breath, and they keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going, and then they have to grab air. So that increases their speed, and they lose variety that way. So those are the 3 biggest things that I see with people. And they're quite common, really.
Yeah, and I mean, I can relate to every single one of those things, and I think that just as far as my speaking personally, like I tend to like think a million miles a minute, and when I think back to the way that I used to speak, like maybe a high school age, I would forget to breathe. I would say half a sentence and then switch gears and go off on a whole other sentence. And then I noticed that even after I got those sorts of things under control, I still had to make sure that I slowed myself down a lot, a lot. And then even, I mean, I'm even not super great now, but like I'll go back and I'll listen to myself, like either in like a podcast like this or on a webinar or something, and I'll just notice that even though it's painful for me to listen to myself, I'll notice that even when I think I'm slowing myself down and I think that I'm speaking incomplete sentences, sometimes I'll say like half a sentence, or sometimes I'll say a sentence plus 10%. And so I can completely relate to all those things where like the voice is tempered because I'm sort of playing it safe, or where I lose that variety, or I'm just going so fast. I'm just trying to hang on to my own breathing that I forget to slow down and be rational, I guess.
Yeah, and that's really common. I work with a lot of people that they have that their brain is going so fast. It's interesting. A lot of, I would say, well, and this isn't, I don't mean this as a criticism like other people aren't smart, but because I believe that everybody is smart in their own way. But a lot of the people that come to me, they're quite analytical, and their brains do, work very, very quickly and on this, all this technical stuff, and they just, they get this information going, and the result of it is they end up going fast because it's almost as if their mouth's trying to keep up with their incredible intelligence. Well, then we lay that in. So then that's what the muscle memory is going to deliver. And that's kind of what you're talking about. You had to train yourself to slow down. That's it exactly.
And I noticed too that as I began to slow myself down, I noticed that I liked myself better. And before I had actually thought that through, I thought that speaking faster was better because I thought, well, if someone saw me rattling off all this stuff, they'd say, wow, like he's super smart. He's saying this fact and that fact. But then when I went back and listened to how it actually came out, it sounded like I was just a babbling idiot almost. And I realized too that if I heard other speakers speak that fast, I would think, wow, well, they must not be very smart because they can't even keep their own thoughts straight. And then so I kind of realized that, maybe speaking slowly is not such a bad thing because now I can actually make a point. And so I mean, what are your thoughts on like how do I mean, where do people even start, right? Like if someone says, well, I don't like the way that I speak, or I need to change things. I mean, where does someone even and go from knowing nothing to knowing what needs to be changed?
Well, I think one of the things that I can certainly say, and there's lots of options, but I do voice assessments for people all of the time where I tell them exactly what they should work on. But, one of the big things is definitely if there's an issue, if there's a foundation issue with the sound stuck in the back of the throat or a nasality or the words not coming out, that is a foundation issue. And that's where they need to start. But we also want to look at patterns and go-tos. Patterns would be like, I always speak fast, or I always speak quiet, or I always say a few words and pause, and say a few words and pause. Because those are the things that are getting in the way of your variety. But variety is also a great place to start because variety, there's 5 elements of variety. And there's 5 senses. And when we use all of the elements of variety, that's really one of the best ways that we can captivate our audience. So what I find is one, perception gets in the way. What we perceive we're doing is not necessarily what is being received. So perception can get in the way. And then it becomes about setting what I call a core 5. Set your speed at moderate, like Goldilocks' porridge, not too hot, not too cold, just right. Don't go too fast, don't go too slow, just right. Set your pitch, set your pace, set your volume at moderate. And then what you can do is you can start playing with shades on either side. You can slow down a little, or you can speed up a little, or you can get a little louder, or you can get a little quiet. And so by rolling in that variety, you really start to step into that ability to captivate the room. And what's interesting is the things that people think are the powerful pieces, like fast and loud, are actually not. The power pieces of variety are slower, not all slow, but slower bits where you reel me in, and quiet. And pretty much everybody I've worked with over the last 20 years flips out when I say, okay, we're going to need to add in quiet and slow. Whoa, 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 why would we do that? Because those are your power pieces. But we believe that that's going to mess us up. If we get quiet, nobody will listen. If we pause, which is the most powerful tool in the variety toolbox, well, good grief, why would I pause? People will stop listening. No, people will start listening. So, it just becomes about checking that perception and then starting to establish that core, that moderate everything, and then rolling in the shades. So that's really a great place to start. The foundational elements are a little trickier to do on your own, but foundation is important. Connecting to the breath, getting the sound out, getting the endings out clearly, but not over articulating them. We don't want to do that either. Basically, we want to get back to your voice as it is before life got in the way, if that makes sense.
It does, and it makes me think about, like, if I go to like a marketer's website that I like, and I go and I read their blog posts, I almost like, if I know them pretty well, I can hear that person's voice in their blog posts or in their email. Something that's written is somehow phrased exactly in the way that that person would have phrased it. And I think that, as you were sort of explaining that to me, like there's something in there that I'm still trying to keep my head around lately, which is that I can be slow and quiet and sort of be intense still. Like, it's not just an on or off. Like, I used to think that if I was calm and quiet, it meant I was low energy, and then if I was fast and loud, that I was high energy. But from what I'm hearing from you, and as far as the different shades and different elements of variety, it's that I can be quiet and sort of a little like laid back, but still intense and still focused. And it's not just a matter of one or the other. I can have all these different components in the map, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the voice is like a big rubber band ball, I think, but it's creating that unpredictability. It's not picking the one. So I've got to be fast and loud all the time. I've got to keep them, I've got to keep them, I've got to keep them, I've got to keep them. Well, you just became predictable, or maybe it's not fast and loud, maybe whatever it is. The minute you become predictable, every 90 seconds, research shows us that every 90 seconds, the brain tells us to check out. So when we become vocally predictable, we give our audience permission to check out. So, the more unpredictable we can be, the more power we have. It's just like I sometimes use the example of the hard sell. When we're dealing with a hard sell, we know it's coming. It's so predictable. We know they're going to come in hard, they're going to get loud, they're going to really get pushy, and they're going to try to sell us. We already know. So I tell, salespeople that are used to hard sell training, flip it. Well, when they wrap their mind around that, it's like, what? They flip it and they watch the shift, and it's the unpredictability. So we really want all of it, because for a number of reasons, and I've done a lot of research on this. We want the unpredictability because certain people in our audience, whether it's an audience of 1 or an audience of 5,000, they're all going to resonate with a different element of variety. For example, I'm loud averse. I don't like people yelling at me. I don't like people hammering on me. I don't like people, just jabbing me. So if someone is speaking to me and they're doing nothing but jabbing me, guess what? I'm out. I'm checked out. So, and then you might have somebody who's soft averse or fast averse. So we want to use all of those elements so that we can touch all of our audience, we can affect all of their senses and create that maximum unpredictability. I believe that when we don't, that's part of the vocal barrier, is what I call it. I think that the voice has the power to create a barrier between us and our audience, and it becomes the difference in let me think about it versus here is my Visa number, sell me everything you have.
Awesome. And I'm hearing a few different things in there. And one is that, I mean, I keep thinking of the term and the pattern interrupts. Like if someone's unpredictable and changes things up, then that'll seem to wake people up. And the other thing that comes to mind is that, like if I listen to someone, like especially like a stage speaker where, I might be sort of stuck in a room, many times I'll only remember a handful of things somebody said in like a 60-minute or a 90-minute kind of presentation. I might only remember like, 3 or 4 little talking points. And so if someone sort of goes through that whole spectrum and they, like you said, like they might for a little while be sort of have the pauses, or they might be more in your face. And so if I have a certain sort of speaking style that I like to listen to, if they have that variety, then at some point they'll grab me, and at some point I'll tune into them, as opposed to them just choosing a style and sticking with it.
That's right. That's right. If they choose a style and it doesn't resonate with us, or it becomes predictable, we know where they're going, and then that 90-second checkout kicks in, well, guess what's going to happen? So it's, I like to think of it in terms of an orchestra. How many instruments does an orchestra have? Well, a lot. So are you going to play 2 instruments in your orchestra, or are you going to play all the instruments in the orchestra? And that's what
sounds like more sense, right?
Yeah, and that's what the voice is. It's the orchestra of the heart, and that's why it's so vulnerable.
Well, cool. And you keep mentioning a few times there's these 5 elements of variety, and just to make sure that I have them correctly. So you said that there is there's like the pitch component of it, there's the volume component of it. Can I make sure that we have all 5 elements, just to make sure that I understand them?
Sure. So there's pausing, which is the most powerful tool in the toolbox. And again, all of these are used as variety, not as patterns. If, I say pausing is the most powerful tool. If you have a pause in your pattern, you're losing your power of the pause.
Then you're William Shatner, using it too
much.
Yeah,
right. So there's pausing, elongation, which is, saying, I really am loving this chat with you, Robert. Then you've got pitch, high and low, volume, loud and soft, speed, fast and slow. So we want to establish that core, and then we want to play the shades of variety on either side. Just bits here and there. I do something a little faster, I do something a little quieter. It's not this all or nothing. This all or nothing is, what is, people come to me and they say, I'm not keeping my audience, I'm not captivating, I'm flatlining, I'm not interesting. It's because it's this all or nothing. They're using 1 or maybe 2 elements. So we infuse all 5, and it totally changes the game.
Awesome. So pausing, elongation, pitch, volume, and speed, and it really is helpful for me to see and to hear that all laid out, because I mean I can totally relate to that. Like I think, well, if I'm talking, how do I add some emphasis, or how do I really make a point? And the only things that would really come to mind off the top of my head were to maybe speak louder or speak faster. But then because we have all these tools in the toolbox, and like you said, there's different shades of it, we can sort of pause here and there when we really want to make a point, or we want to say something for impact, and just leave that blank space a little bit. And so that way we can, like you said, we can sort of pick and choose which one we want. We can use it to varying degrees, and that way we're not just the one-trick pony just doing the same thing over and over, which in itself would sort of get boring. And so you mentioned also this thing called a voice assessment. And so is that a place where someone should start, or should they start in a different sort of area of research?
Well, I think that's a great place to start, and I personally offer that service free. I let, people can send me an audio or a video, and I listen to it and I get back to them and I say, okay, this is where your strengths lie, and this is what's getting in your way. And because I think that a lot of people have a sense of what's going on, but I think some people maybe don't. They know they don't sound confident. They know they're not that interesting. But I certainly bottom line it. Okay, your loud and your quiet variety is outstanding. What we've got to do is we've got to add in some fast and slow. Or what I hear is your sound is stuck in the back of your throat. Your tonal quality is fantastic, but your voice isn't coming out. And so I think it's, because it's kind of like, it's such a niche and it's such a specialty. It's kind of like going to a general practitioner for eye surgery. You wouldn't necessarily do that. So I think it's good to have that input, but I think across the board, what I'd love for people to see is just how powerful the voice is. Whether you get an assessment from me or whether you try things out on your own or watch YouTube videos or whatever you do, the voice is the most powerful tool you have because it brings those words to life, and it is what sets you apart. So, my goal is for people to really start to understand that just the power, if you can regulate your voice, you can get anything you want.
Right. I mean, I agree about 100 trillion%. And the thing that I'm hearing from the way that you sort of, number one, break it down into these five elements of variety, and also how you run these assessments, is that it seems like this would help people out of the pity party rut, I guess, for lack of a better term, in that, I think that I've fallen in this in the past, and I've seen other people fall into this, where they know that their speaking voice is not great, and maybe they're ashamed of it, or maybe, like we discussed earlier, maybe they've been kind of beat down over time. And I don't know, like, I see a lot of people who they know that they're not good speakers, but they're too ashamed to even do anything about it, and they're too ashamed to break down the problem into manageable and solvable pieces. And it sounds like with this voice assessment, first of all, it's great that people can just send in a clip, so that way it's not like you have to be on the phone with them, and then you'll come back with, not saying their voice is good or bad, but if I'm understanding this right, you're saying that within these core five elements, you're telling them where their strengths and weaknesses are. So that way it's not just a matter of, well, you suck, fix this, but it's like, well, here's the area where you are good, so you don't have to put as much work into that, but then here's the area where the hurt is, and this should be investigated more. Is that sort of, am I on the right track there?
You're spot on, Robert. You're spot on. And, I don't believe in bad voices. I believe in good voices and amazing voices. And there's good things about everybody's voice. But, years ago, I used to take it personal. I would have so many no-shows. And I would think, why are all these people no-showing? And then a colleague of mine said, don't you realize how traumatized they are? They're terrified to even get in front of the voice person out of the fear that you're going to say, oh my gosh, you're horrible. And then it made perfect sense. And then I really started watching the clients that I would work with, and they would start sessions like in their best voice, for fear. I know it was out of fear that I was going to say, oh my gosh, you're terrible. And I just don't see it that way. There's great things about everybody's voice, but I hear everything. And that's the beauty of it, is I can hear exactly where the link is broken, and I can tell you exactly what we need to do to fix it. So there's really, and certainly, sending me an audio, you never even have to see me. So it's super safe. And I get back with very detailed replies, your breathing is fantastic, your tonal quality is great, or, whatever. There's always good, but there's always ways, or usually ways, that people with very simple technique can really make some big shifts, really make a bigger impact.
Awesome. So a huge change just from a couple of small, simple tweaks. And so when you say that you come back with a reply, I mean, what sort of reply are we talking about? Like, is it written? Is it your voice? Is you on video? What do people get back from what they submit to you?
Well, usually, lately I've been writing, but I write like 2 or 3 pages sometimes. So I
Oh,
have
wow.
actually, yeah, it's very detailed. It's not, hey, good job. Maybe add in some variety. It's not like that at all. Sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, 5 pages. And so for 2017, I'm actually thinking about doing video replies because one, it's probably a little faster and a little less strain on my carpal tunnel. But for another, I can really show examples. I can say, this is what I hear. I hear these sounds pulling back like this. Do you hear that? And this is what we want. And, I can kind of explain it a little bit more. So I'm thinking about gravitating towards video for 2017.
Interesting. And then it's sort of along those lines as far as, the video and being on camera, do you work at all with like a person's body language or a person's stance, or is it just the voice aspect of it?
No, I have always said that I'm truly a voice movement integration person. And when I taught in all these conservatories around the world, that was what I taught. I taught voice and movement integration. So I don't necessarily get into gestures like you might be thinking about gestures. What I get into are two things. One, getting people grounded, because a lot of people are doing a whole lot of movement in video, and what that does is that ungrounds their voice. Their voice doesn't stand a chance of working properly if they're ungrounded. And two, what I have seen and studied over the years is that the voice is going to come out, but depending on what we're doing and how we're protecting it, it can try to come out in the body. So in a video, if you see someone doing a repetitive movement like a hammer chop, hammer chop, hammer chop with their hands, that's actually their voice trying to come out of their hands rather than their mouth. So we'll strengthen up that pipeline and reduce that movement in their hands so that they have more voice power, because then their voice is coming out the right way. So I work with the body in that sense, but not so much, okay, let's break your gestures down. Now, I've done that before, but I really do it more in the context of getting the voice sounding the most powerful by getting rid of the extraneous movement.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So the focus is on the voice.
Right, right.
And then where can people go to claim that voice assessment?
You can go to my website, but you can also email me, which is, I have people send the audios or videos to my email, which is Tracy, Tracy, at captivatetheroom.com. And they just need to send me a 2 or 3 minute audio or video. I can pick up exactly what we need to do in that amount of time. They can do a presentation. They can just tell me a story. A lot of people send me videos introducing themselves and telling me what they think their challenges are. Really anything that, is just good, good quality sound where I can hear what's going on, and they can email it to me. But my email address is also on the website, which is captivatetheroom.com.
Awesome. And so speaking of captivatetheroom.com, I mean, can you tell us about that website?
Sure. On the website, well, for one thing, I offer in addition to the free assessment, I have something called the Voice Formula, and people can sign up for that. And that's a series of videos. It's all free, where I kind of address through technique some of the major issues that people are struggling with. So that's one thing that is on the website. And then, of course, my services are offered on there. I have online downloadable courses, which for some people, they really like that. For other people, they want a little more one-to-one interaction. The majority of the work that I do is working with privately with people one-on-one. And then a couple of times a year, I run a group program. And so I'll start another group program in January. But I've also got all of my podcast episodes on the site. I've got some articles. lots of good information, links to my YouTube channel on the site as well.
Awesome. So it sounds like you have everything. So for people who are just a little bit curious, looking to get their toe wet or whatever, they can email you at tracy@captivatetheroom.com and send a 2 to 3 minute audio or video clip to get that assessment. They can go to captivatetheroom.com and check out your podcast and get to that YouTube channel. And then can you tell us a little more details about that event you mentioned and about your courses and about your coaching, just like a little more detail about what people can pay you for?
Okay, well, I've got all different kinds of courses. I've got voice technique for video, webinar, and podcast success. I've got a storytelling course. I've got a Get Back to Your Real Voice course. I'm just today going to roll out, hopefully will go out today, a course for e-course creators, because I have a lot of clients that are e-course creators, and that's why they came to me, because maybe they have a lot of PowerPoints, maybe they're doing talking head videos, but they know that their voice is not as impactful for the online students as they'd like. So that course is coming out today. And then the group program, which I'll roll out again in January, that is, you get a video every week. It's an 8-week program. You get a video or sometimes up to 4 videos every week. And then once a week, we have an online session where I kind of go over what the training materials were that week. And then I try to work with everybody in a hot seat kind of way. And usually when I roll that program out, I offer a free one-on-one session to get it really specialized, because the voice is very specialized. There's a core set of issues that I see across the board, but everybody's issues are different. And then, of course, one-on-one training is usually, and people are always shocked at this, usually you just work with me a month, and I can make some pretty major shifts in the muscle memory in a month. Sometimes longer, but usually a month.
Awesome. That sounds like there's a lot of hope for the rest of us in that case, if it can be more or less fixed in a month. And I like how you have these courses that are specifically geared not just for speaking in general or stage speaking in general, but that's really cool that you have a course just for presenting on webinars, or a course just for making an e-course. I like that a lot. And so for someone to go from captivatetheroom.com and find those courses, where should someone go in the navigation on that?
There is at the top, on the bar across the top, there is a little button called Work With Me, and it pulls there's a drop down menu, and so you can just click on one-on-one, or there's a downloadable course menu where you can get to all my downloadable courses, and then of course when I'm running the group program, there's a button up for that. Sometimes I do live workshops, and when I do live workshops, which I love, and I haven't done in a few years, but I'm getting back to it. If I do live workshops, and I'm out in California, so they would usually be in the Los Angeles area, sometimes in New York, or sometimes in Texas, then there'll be a button for my live workshops as well on that Work With Me drop down.
Awesome. So it sounds like the Work With Me drop down at captivatetheroom.com is where all the good stuff is, where everyone can go ahead and buy the different things that you have, whether it's, like you said, live event, one-on-one, or a course. And I mean, I think that this is such an overlooked area. I think that everyone needs to be a better speaker, myself included. And I think that, if we all made that effort to make our speaking a little bit better, then we'd have that much more impact, that much more of like the conversion rate, that much more of the selling on webinars, on videos, on podcasts, and live events. I think that this is such a very important skill, although for some people it's really scary, but I like the way that you broke this down, especially with those 5 elements: pausing, elongation, pitch, volume, and speed. And at least the way that my brain works, Tracy, is that I can look at that and I can say, okay, now there's hope. Now it's not just that, it's not that I was born with a bad voice, or it's not that I learned things a certain way and now I'm stuck and I can't unlearn it. Now instead, I can just look at which of the 5 areas am I good at, which need improving, which kind of could I have more variety in, and even if I'm not sure, then I can go to you and get this voice assessment. So I mean, I want to thank you so much, Tracy, for telling us about all this Captivate the Room stuff and helping us in improving our speaking, which is such an important thing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I have absolutely loved being here with you today. Thanks for having me on the show.
Stop! Do you have a website? Is it run on WordPress? Do you even know how many sites you have out there, including old sites, half-finished sites, client sites, test sites, and more? What do you do when a new version of WordPress comes out, or even an update to your favorite plugin? Do you let your websites just sit there and go out of date? Or even worse, do you have to log into each of your sites one at a time to run updates? Do you leave everything to chance with automatic updates that might break your sites in the middle of the night? There's a better way, and it's called Website Remote. For just one low monthly fee, you can update, monitor, and log into all your sites in one click. Go to websiteremote.com/trial to